As always, this episode is brought to you by Cool Dude Inc. Go check it out. There's a link at the bottom in the notes. Go check it out. Affordable shirts. Go make yourself look good. And while you're at it, as long as you're scrambling around, shuffling around the bottom of the video, how about hitting that like and share button and subscribe? Actually, mainly just subscribe. If you want to share, cool. I don't know if you like. I don't need to tell you what to do. Either you like it or you don't. If you do like it, then you should try and get other people to like it, because the more views I get, the more motivated I am to make more videos. And when nobody watches them, I'm kind of like, why am I spending all this time making videos that 3 people watch? And I love all 3 of you, but there's a pressure on my head that I don't need. It's stress. You see these gray hairs? You got them cut out. You can't tell now, but there's a lot of them. I'm getting old. Tonight's movie is I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I've been meaning to do this movie for many summers, because I used to have a blog page, and I was going to do it then. So, because technically I've been doing this for probably 4 years in terms of writing. I did that for a couple years before I was making videos, and I always wanted to do this, but it's something I always forgot about. And then the summer was over. It's like, God damn it, I was planning to do that movie. Then watching it and realizing it's like, this is on the 4th of July, because I'm always like, what's a good 4th of July movie? Because I know Return of the Living Dead takes place, it starts July 3rd. So technically that's a 4th of July movie. But this is a movie that actually, it's amazing how much I forgot about this movie. Because it's been a while since I've watched it, but I've watched it a lot. But it takes place on the 4th. Not only does it take place on the 4th of July, it takes place 3 times on the 4th of July. Because this movie actually spans years. Let's jump into it. Did we cover all the bases? We did. We're ready to get in this movie. I think my favorite thing about this movie was the name. I Know What You Did Last Summer, because that's so, I don't know, it's just kind of this, it's so simple and it's almost cheesy, but I like that whole don't go into the woods, I like a title that pretty much tells you what the movie's going to be about. It's like, I don't need to read the back of this. I don't need to read the description. It's like, I know what this is about. Some people did some fucked up shit one summer and somebody knows about it and they're coming for revenge. I'm on board. I love it. Next to Massacre in the title, it's my favorite way to go about it. And it opens up with Summer Breeze, the typo negative version. The late great Peter Steele. Great song. And there's some dude sitting on the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean. Very beautiful view. A lot of people do that kind of stuff because it re-energizes them and makes them feel reinvigorated. But this guy's got a flask, and I'm pretty sure he's planning to kill himself. He's trying to figure out, should I finish this flask and then kill myself, or just kill myself? Elsewhere in town, which is a fishing town, there's the Croaker Queen Pageant that they have every year right around the 4th of July. Well, on the 4th of July. And we meet Helen. She's a contestant. And then we meet her 3 friends, her boyfriend Barry, and Julie and Ray, who are watching in the distance. And Helen wins! Yay! Afterward, they party. And we meet Max, who's played by David from Roseanne. He also played Leonard in Big Bang Theory. He also played Ira in Suicide King. You're the man. You're the man, Ira. Ira, you're the man. And his character basically depicts what we, the viewer, because I was 21 when this movie came out. So Max's character depicts basically anybody my age, within 5 years either way of my age, wanting Jennifer Love Hewitt in her prime and being gently shot down. And it's heartbreaking, and it makes you feel for Max, because you feel like Max when you're watching. You're like, dude, Max, I'm on your team. I get it. But at the same time, because Max points out that they've known each other all their lives, so he's kind of the Ducky. But he's not really Ducky. He aspires to be Ducky. He thinks he's Ducky. Except it kind of doesn't work, because he's trying to steal Ray Ray's girl, and Ray Ray's the nice guy. He's the cool guy. Ducky was trying to steal the girl from the prick, knowing that he was the better option. Max is trying to take... I get it and everything, but story-wise, it would have worked better if he was trying to take Helen, because Helen is dating Barry, Ryan Felipe, the douchebag character. So if he was trying to take... Like, you would have more empathy for him if he was trying to take the asshole's girlfriend. But instead, he's like, I'm not as good as Ray, but I saw you I called dibs in kindergarten. So he just kind of looks like a dick. You don't feel sorry for him at all. But Barry shuts that shit down real quick. And then they continue their little party down at Dawson's Beach. This film the screenplay is based on a book by Lois Duncan. But Kevin Williamson did the screenplay. He's the same guy that did Scream. And he would later on pen Dawson's Creek. So them going to Dawson's Beach is kind of funny. Because I think Kevin Williamson had a lot of shit up his sleeve. And the guy's a good writer. I love his dialogue. It's good. Especially in the 90s where like you have Tarantino, Kevin Smith, where shit's dialogue driven. This guy brings a lot to the table, but he does it in a completely different way where he's not ripping off those guys. Like his style is completely different, and it seems usually it seems more mature than the characters should be able to talk. Not the case in this movie, but Dawson's Creek there was a lot of like, why are they high school kids talk like they're fucking 40? Once they get to the beach, they drink, and they're telling the urban legend about the killer with a hook for a hand, and they're going over the story, and like they all kind of know it, but they're correcting each other. But somehow Ray seems to know more about the story, and he gets kind of like takes it personally anytime they get a detail wrong. He's kind of like, no, that's not how it happened. No, you guys aren't listening. I know. Like he's an expert. And immediately Ray kind of becomes this red herring, even though there hasn't been any deaths or anything. But he's signaling to the viewer where it's like, I know how to kill people. Like somehow he was involved in that urban legend, which is impossible. But they've just graduated, so this is their last summer together. When the fall comes, they're all going to go their separate ways, go to college, and become adults. And this is the last time, like, things will never be quite the same. Like, regardless of the plot of the movie. But also, the urban legend they're telling with the hook for a hand kind of foreshadows the rest of the movie. So they leave the beach and they're driving down the road. Ray drives, because even though it's Barry's car, he's way too fucked up to drive. So Ray drives, and they're driving, and like Barry starts partying. There's a sunroof, and he opens it, and he's like rocking out, and he's got his bottle of liquor. He's like, woo, yeah! And then he accidentally drops it down in like the console. Ray and Julie are in the front seat, and it spills all over them. And they're like, what the fuck are you doing? And Ray takes his eyes off the road for a second, and then they hit something, but they're not sure what. And they kind of skid out. Ray panics. He's like, holy shit, we just hit something, and they don't know. And it's like, oh, it might be an animal or something, but then they look a little further and they discover it's a body. They hit a human. And it's one little mistake like that. They're on the verge of becoming successful. Like the door's just open. They're going to become successful adults, and they hit one hiccup. And that hiccup being a person they hit with their car. Now they got a decision to make. Because their lives can be, everything they've worked for their whole lives can be thrown away in this one moment if they're honest. If we're honest and we go to the police, we're fucked. Our lives are over. And especially Barry. Barry's, as much as Barry wants to act like he's looking out for the whole group, he's not. He's like, it's my car, there's booze all over inside, I'm fucking shit-faced. There's no way the cops aren't going to believe that I was the one driving. So he's kind of like, fuck you guys, I'm fucked. Like to the point where, like if it was Ray's car and that happened, if Barry would have been like, well, we should call the cops and do the right thing. But since it was Barry's ass going in the frying pan, he eggs everybody on to do the not right thing. And I don't know how it would have worked out either way. But Ray wasn't drinking. So they figure, you know, the guy's already dead and there's an ocean right there. Why don't we just throw his body in the water? He'll wash up eventually. I'm kind of like, if he washes up at all. Perfect plan. And they go to dump his body But while they're getting ready to dump his body, they realize he's not dead. And he grabs Helen's crown as they push him off into the water. So Barry jumps in after it, and he can see perfectly underwater. Am I the only one on the planet that if I don't have goggles on and I'm underwater, I can't see anything in front? Everything's blurry. Blurrier. But most people are like, oh, I can see perfectly underwater. Really? I can't. But he jumps down there and he looks at the guy, and it looks like the guy from the opening who was planning to kill himself. So he gets the crown and he goes back up to the surface and he's yelling at people. And like, Ray's the most bitch-ass boyfriend ever, because the way Barry just flips out on Julie every time she talks. He's like, fuck it, we're making a pact. And she's like, this is murder. He's like, shut the fuck up. As like, especially because Ray's significantly bigger than Barry. So like, why don't you knock his ass out? Why do you let him talk to your girl like that? It's weird. Oh, and I forgot to mention that before they got to the ocean, or before they were going to dump him in the water, a vehicle approaches and they look, and they're like, oh shit, hide the body. They kind of like stand in a way where you can't see the body, and it's Max. He's like, hey, what's going on? So Max was at the scene. 1 year later, we catch up with the gang, and Julie's been in college this whole time, but now it's time to go home. And she gets home, and Julie's not the same as she was in the opening of this movie. And she goes home, and her mom can tell the difference. And her mom like tries to give her dinner, and she's not hungry, and she seems depressed. And her mom's just like, "What happened? What happened to you? You're like a different person." And she can just see like how dead inside Julie is. But as a parent, she doesn't know what to do. She's just like, feel better. And instead of making things actually better, she kind of makes them worse, because like, oh, there's a note for you. And Julie goes and looks at the note, and it says, I know what you did last summer. Julie's like, holy shit. So Julie wants to get in touch with Helen, so she goes to Helen's family store, where she runs into Helen's sister. And she's like, I'm trying to get in touch with Julie. Do you know her number in New York? She's like, her number, she doesn't have a number in New York. She's right over there. There's a certain happiness in Helen's failure that her sister took, where she's like, she's over there. She didn't go to New York. She tried that. She failed, and she's back. She didn't last a month out there. It's kind of fucked up. Your big sister rooting against you. But they catch up a little bit, and she tells her about the note, and she's like, oh shit. So they go and visit Barry. And Barry was a prick from Jump Street, but now he's even a bigger prick. And he's just like talking shit to them. And it's like, I don't know. No, I want to punch Barry in the face. Barry's lucky I'm not in this movie, because I would have fucking knocked his ass out. But they find out the guy that they killed, his name was David Egan. The cops found his body a couple weeks later, and he is dead. And the death was by drowning. And so if the guy's dead, it can't be him who's leaving notes for them. So they start connecting the dots, and they're like, Max was there that night. Maybe he saw more than we thought, and now he's fucking with us because he always had a thing for Julie. So Barry decides he's gonna shut that shit down. He goes to Max's work, because Max is a fisherman. And he goes in there and starts bullying him around and scares the shit out of him. And Max is like, I don't even know what the fuck you're talking about. And he backs down, and he's like, oh, I won't do anything, even though I'm not doing anything anyway. And while down there at the marina, they run into Ray, who he didn't really, he didn't aspire to much either. Because other than Julie, everybody's just kind of like, they're townies that somehow, in a small town, they don't run into each other. But now Ray's a fisherman, just like his dad, just like he didn't want to be. Because Ray was hanging out with the rich kids. Helen and Julie and Barry, they're the rich kids. And Ray managed to get in there based on his charm and good looks. And that's why he doesn't stand up for himself, because he's like, I'm a piece of shit. I'm lucky that you guys hang out with me. Because he's actually the poorest out of town, like Max. Because Max called him out on that when they ran into him that night. He's like, shit, you got this rich boy thing down, but I know who you are. And he's like, move along, Max. Or it's like, you're right, Max, but can you talk quieter before they all find out what the fuck you're saying? As we see Ray, we see that everything they tried to achieve by hiding, by getting rid of the body, by not going to jail, by not going to the cops, all that just so they could live their lives and not be successful and not end up in jail and spend the rest of their lives in prison. Their lives ended up being destroyed anyway because of the guilt of what they had done. They all knew about it, and it's almost like it's that thing where once it's like if you admit to something, then it's over and you suffer the consequences. But if you hide it, and you have to hide it, you're hiding it the rest of your life, and it'll fucking eat you from the inside out. And that's what's happening to them. And in the next scene, Max gets killed, so that kind of eliminates him as the killer. And then Barry, after a workout, gets run down by a car, and the killer stands above him but doesn't kill him. Next scene, we're at the hospital, and now the gang is finally completely back together as they talk to him, and he's like, for the 40th time I didn't see his face. And after putting their heads together, it's funny because they don't know Max is dead, but they're kind of like eliminating him as a suspect, and they're like, it must be like a family member of David Egan's, and so they track down his sister. And Julie makes it abundantly clear to Ray that their relationship is over. Then she and Helen put on their Columbo jackets and they do a little research. They find out that the previous 4th of July, David Egan got in a car accident where he was driving and his girlfriend Susie died. And it was at Dawson's Beach where it happened, and that's why he was over there contemplating suicide. Because it was the 1-year anniversary. So they find his sister, Melissa. They find her address and they pay her a visit. And she lives in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre styled house alone. And she's weird and creepy. All they can get is the name Billy Blue. And when I hear that name, I think, wait, didn't he used to hang out with John Smith? And both of them were friends with George Glass. Get it? It's a fake name. But they don't get it. But finding this out doesn't make Julie feel any better. It just makes her feel worse. Because she's kind of like the conscience of the film. Where everybody's doing whatever they can. But she's the one where it's like, dude, what we did was wrong. We need to take ownership. Our lives are falling apart. I mean, she has a shitload of empathy. Except when it comes to Ray. Even though Ray was doing the best he could. Even if he was wrong, Helen and Julie drive away. And Helen basically cracks the case. She's like, hey, is there anything, maybe, his girlfriend died. He was driving. Maybe he wanted to die. It was a year later. Maybe he felt so bad about it. But Julie's like, no, that whatever helps you sleep at night. But with Helen, it's like, you know what? You might be right. I mean, maybe you're making an excuse for yourself, but you're certainly doing a better job of putting yourself in David's shoes than old Julie is at this moment. So Helen goes home. She kind of walks. She doesn't sneak in, but like nobody knows. Like her dad, just sitting on the couch watching baseball with like a glass of whiskey, and just he doesn't like hear the door and be like, "Hey, pumpkin." And it's weird because I've watched this movie a lot of times, and this is the first time I watched it and thought, I always thought of Helen as kind of like the goody-goody. I mean, she won the pageant. She's supposed to be like the bitchy girl that dies first. But then the more I see her home life, because then on top of it, like her sister comes home and says, hey, you got to work tomorrow. And she's like, I have the pageant parade tomorrow. And I realized, like, her life isn't really that great. The facade of her life is like this. It's like, oh, wow, you're the blonde cheerleader girl. Everything's working out for you. But then when you look at her up close, you realize, oh, this poor girl. And none of that's true. She's just a fucking person, and her life kind of sucks. Her dad's fucking absent. I don't know where her mom is, and her sister's a bitch that treats her like shit and roots against her when she fails in college. But the killer pays her a visit that night. In the morning, she wakes up and her crown's on her head. And it turns out the killer isn't just a killer. He also likes to sneak around at night and give people shitty free haircuts that they didn't ask for. And now her hair looks funny and it's parade day, so she calls Julie. Julie rushes over, and on the way she hears like weird noises coming from the back of her car, so she pulls over and she opens it and she sees Max's corpse in her trunk. And he's got a bad case of crabs. Luckily, she's close enough to Helen's house that she can just run the rest of the way. And she gets over there, and Barry's there, and she's like, "Hey, oh my God, you won't believe what's in my trunk. It's Max. You guys gotta come out." So they go back to her car. They open the trunk. There's nothing in it. It looks like there was never crabs or Max or anything in there. It looks like a perfectly clean trunk. And they're like, "What the hell? What kind of are you trying to be funny, Julie? Are you trying to be funny? That's a weird joke to play right now." And like, she's not hallucinating. So how this killer can like put a body in there, that's the dark part. But how the killer got the body and every crab out of there in like maybe 3.5 minutes in broad daylight without being seen. Not one crab left over in the trunk or around the car. Pretty amazing, pretty unbelievable. So Julie kind of loses her shit and does that whole, "What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?" But we get some cleavage. They pay Ray a visit, and Barry immediately punches him in the face and knocks him on the ground. I don't know if the casting's bad, but come on. Ray's a bigger boy from the Poe side of town. I don't understand why he didn't just whip Barry's ass. But then they all kind of make up, and they go back to Helen's house, and they start talking, and they do a little investigating, and then they hit the original social media, Helen's sister's yearbook. And they find David Egan's picture, but they can't find Billy Blue, which is kind of funny because that means like Helen's sister is like in the same grade as David Egan and has had zero emotional connection to this situation. Since they can't find Billy Blue in the yearbook, they devise a new plan. Helen is going to go to the parade. Barry's going to keep his eye on her. And Julie is going back to the house with the yearbook to see if maybe Billy Blue was a fake name and maybe she could find the guy that she saw. And they can figure out his real name because they really want to talk to Billy Blue. Or whatever the fuck his name is. Ray's like, thinks that this whole thing is ridiculous, so he tries to talk him out of it, but that just makes him look more like the red herring. And Julie has a good argument. She's like, "Hey, today's the 4th of July. It's going to happen. It's going to happen now. Everything up to now has been a warning. Today's the day it's going to happen. We need to fucking get some answers. Cover our ass or else we're not going to see tomorrow." Paranoia sits in at the parade because let's face it, they're trying to find a fisherman in a fisherman town. That phrase, everything looks like a nail when you're the hammer, kind of comes to mind here. Barry's dumbass tackles some old man. But they didn't even say he's sorry. He's just like, "Oh, where is he?" And he's like, that old man might be dead now. Julie goes back to Missy's house with the yearbook. Because she's confronting her. She's like, "Billy Blue, I don't know if that's his real name. Can you find a guy that looks like him?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" "No." And Julie is about to like confess everything to her. She's like, "Hey, what happened that night is not what you think." And his sister Missy's like, "I know. A lot of people think it was an accidental drowning. I know he didn't drown on accident. He killed himself. He felt so bad about the car accident where he killed Susie, and the whole town treats him like it's his fault that he committed suicide." Which is kind of funny because like the whole town made him feel that bad. So wait, our main characters, our 4 main characters in this movie are the only people in town that don't know this story. They heard the name David Egan and they're like, "Who's this? Let's go to the library card catalog system and see if we can do some research." And that's how they know him. Yet the rest of the fucking town knows full well that it's a small town. How do they not? Sorry, Kevin, but I'm going to have to ding you for this one. That's bad writing. Bad continuity. And to prove it, Missy has his suicide note. It looks like the notes of other people. I forgot what it said. I should have wrote that down. I forget what it says, but it looks like all the other notes. And Julie's like, "That's not a suicide note. That's a death threat." And Missy's like, "You know what? Yeah, I don't believe a word you're saying. I don't want to talk about this. You need to just get the fuck out of here." So Julie leaves, and then she realizes, like, uh-oh. That wasn't David we hit that night. It was somebody else. Since Helen was the Croaker queen the previous year, she has to show up and wear the crown so she can pass the baton to the next winner. Barry is up on the upper deck keeping an eye on her. But who's keeping an eye on him? Because he's by himself. And so the killer comes and finishes him off. Not like last time where he gave him kind of a warning. This time he kills them. And helplessly, Helen watches the whole thing and yells and screams, and everybody wonders why she's freaking out. Nobody believes a word that she's saying. Eventually, one of the cops offers to give her a ride home, and he's driving her. And there's a detour in the road, so he takes the back alley. And in the distance, he can see a guy having car trouble. A fisherman. Somehow, Helen does not realize it's a fisherman with car trouble until the cop is already up and talking to him, and then she's like, holy shit, that's the killer, get out of there. But the cop can't hear. He hears her a little bit, enough to turn his back on the killer and look at her. Then the killer kills him, and she's like, oh fuck, because she's in the back of the cop car. And I don't know if you've ever been in the back of a cop car or not, but they're designed to not open from the inside, because criminals. But then she kicks out the window, which is probably a lot harder to do than she made it look. And she escapes the car and makes a run for it. And then she keeps hauling ass until she gets to her family store where her sister's working. And she's like, let me in. And her sister's like, oh, Jesus, what the fuck? She's like, shut the door and lock it, hurry. Which is funny because it's like, shut the door and lock it. It's a glass door. If somebody's trying to kill you, they're going to be like, oh, man, got away. Man, you're lucky this glass door is here. Otherwise, I was going to kill you. But now this glass door is here. I guess I'll just try again tomorrow. So needless to say, the killer gets inside anyway, and he finds her sister first and kills her. Thanks a lot, Helen. Although her sister's a bitch anyway, so fuck her. And then the killer's after her, and she makes a valiant effort to escape, but eventually he gets her. They're back in a different alley when he kills her. And the fireworks and the marching band and the parade are making so much noise that nobody can hear her screams as she dies. Elsewhere, Julie is doing research. She finds out that Susie had a dad. And where the hell's Ray been this whole time? Because everybody else had a position in this plan of where they were supposed to be and what they were doing, except for Ray. Is Ray the killer? Nah, too ugly. And just then, Julie goes and finds Ray on his boat. And she tries to explain to him that it's like, oh, I think Susie's dad is doing it. Which is kind of weird because, like, why would you think her dad is doing it? There's no reason to think that. And Ray's like, oh, maybe. But then she looks at the name of his boat. His boat's named Billy Blue. She realizes, Billy Blue, you're Billy Blue. You talked to Missy. You're the killer. Like, the assumptions that Julie jumps to whenever she gets, like, a crumb, she's like, oh, she always thinks she has the whole loaf of bread. It's like, bitch, just because you think that. I mean, yeah, it's smart to run away from somebody if you think they're the killer, but it's like you start with this little nibble and you're like, oh, you're the guy. It's like, didn't you date this guy? Don't you have an ounce of, like, who he is? I just date guys. They could be killers. I don't know. We haven't explored the relationship far enough and talked deep enough to find out if he kills people in his spare time or not. Even though it doesn't make sense for him to, like, if he liked killing people, then he wouldn't be mad about accidentally killing people. Except maybe he doesn't like people to know that he does that. And we all know, sort of. I don't know her logic. But she runs, and he runs after her, so it looks like he's chasing her. Then he gets clotheslined by this older gentleman and conveniently gets knocked out. And the older gentleman, the man, says, hey, you're okay, you're safe, get in that boat. So she gets on the boat. And once she's inside, she starts seeing the walls. The walls are like this giant scrapbook of her and her friends and all the times they made the newspaper for, like, track meets and different achievements. It's like, this guy's been watching it. And she realizes this guy is Susie's dad. But she realizes it too late because he unhooks it. And now the boat is moving. Then he approaches her and he's like, oh, okay, you figured it out. I'm the killer. And the mystery's over. He's the killer. He's going to kill her, which is weird because he didn't kill Ray. Ray's still sitting there knocked out. even though Ray was the one driving the car that hit him. But no, it's all Julie's fault. And it's a weird motive for revenge, because basically at this point we figure out Susie's dad killed David Egan because he was pissed about him accidentally killing his daughter. And then they, as soon as he got done, he was walking down the road, and then they hit him with the car and they threw him in the water. They were never trying to kill him. They were getting rid of the body. They left him for dead. Somehow, in his warped mind, them leaving him for dead is worse than him voluntarily killing somebody. And they need to pay. But I guess, I don't know, if my daughter died, like, my agenda would change. I probably would have a lot of time to invest in crazy theories and revenge and trying to make things right. And, you know, I guess it would be hard to go back to normal after that. But still, it just seems a little hypocritical. That's all I'm saying. But Ray gets in a little boat, a little motorboat, and he catches up to them and he climbs on. And him and the killer go toe to toe. And he's kind of been a bitch this whole movie, so like relying on that guy to save the day is kind of a shitty position to be in. But he pulls through. Passes with flying color. There's resistance, but eventually he stops the killer and like ends up chopping off the killer's hand. Then the killer flies in the ocean. And then they're kind of safe. They take the boat back to the shore, and the cops come. It's looking like a happy ending. Ray and Julie are kind of getting close. She sees what he just did for her. Like, you risked your life to save me. I thought you were trying to kill me, and you just risked your life to save me. He's like, that's all I've ever wanted was to be with you. And I don't blame him, because, like I said, this is Jennifer Love Hewitt's prime. But at the same time, they also realize, like, this whole year where our lives were torn apart, we were shattered as people, we never actually killed anybody. And then the cops find the body. They think they do, but it's just the hand holding a hook. And they can't find the rest of it, but they're like, it'll turn up. But it kind of puts us full circle with the urban legend they were telling earlier, but the killer with the hook for the hand. Because now, if we do have a sequel, the killer will be missing a hand, and I'm pretty sure he'll have a hook. 1 year later, Julie gets a note. It's an invitation to a pool party. Then she goes in the shower, and on the wall in big letters it says, I still know. And then we get our jump scare ending that kicks our asses into the sequel. The Badass Award goes to Ray. Being a bitch the whole time, but manning up when he needed to and saving the fucking day. What did we learn? Survival tale. Don't drink and drive. Never. Ever make a pact. While you're watching somebody else's back, don't forget to watch your own. That's it for tonight, kids. I will see you next time.